Hey guys, tonight we're going to visit a part of history most people don't talk about when they're trying to fall asleep. But you'll find no scandal here, no judgment, and no sensationalism. Just one day in the quiet, repetitive life of a woman who lived by candlelight in cold water. She worked in a brothel, yes, but she also woke up tired, carried a chipped mug with both hands to keep the warmth in, and thought about jam tarts the way some people dream of Paris. If you like stories like these, gentle human a little forgotten, I'd be grateful if you tap that subscribe button. And let us know in the comments where you're listening from. Somehow it's comforting to think that someone in Dublin is drifting off to the same history as someone in Saigon or Saskatchewan. All right then, go ahead and find your softest blanket. Let your limbs sink down. Take a breath slow and steady. You're about to wake up in London 1858. And no, you're not curled in a four-poster bed or resting on satin sheets. You're Marjorie now, a brothel worker, tired already. And your day is just beginning. You know it's morning by the smell more than anything else. That thin, chalky scent of coal ash cooling in the grate, mixed with something sharper cooked cabbage maybe, or wet wool left too long near the hearth. There's light behind your eyelids, but not the soft golden kind. This is the kind of pale gray that presses at the corners of windows before dawn has really made up its mind. You blink slowly. The ceiling above you is low and water-stained familiar, in the way unpleasant things become when you've seen them enough. There's a crack along the plaster shaped vaguely like a wishbone. You trace it for a second with your eyes, then roll onto your back. The mattress sags in the center, and has for years. It was old, long before you arrived. The stuffing is horsehair, and the texture never lets you forget it. The blanket has slipped to your knees. It isn't cold enough to see your breath, not quite, but the air carries that unmistakable weight of winter. You know without touching it that the pitcher by the bed has a skin of ice across the top. You'll break it with your knuckles, splash your face, and pretend it helps. That's the way mornings begin here. Outside, someone's pushing a cart over the cobblestones. Iron against stone. Hollow echoes. The sound rises up through the floorboards as natural as a heartbeat by now. Somewhere in the house, wood creaks, footsteps shift overhead, and a door thumps against a warped frame. You're not the only one waking. The house breathes its own slow rhythm, built on the rise and fall of women just like you. You sit up slowly, bracing your hands behind you to push off the mattress. The blanket slides away. Beneath it, your nightdress is thin and faded, but it does the job. Your feet find the floor, bare wood worn smooth by dozens of soles. No rug, no slippers. You learned quickly to keep your shoes by the bed if you didn't want splinters or frostbite. The pitcher is exactly as expected, its icy surface brittle under your touch. You break the film and pour a little into the basin. The water smells faintly metallic like old pipes and old habits. You bend low and splash your face. The shock doesn't wake you so much as confirm that you were never fully asleep. The house doesn't smell of perfume yet. That comes later when clients arrive and lavender water is dabbed behind ears on wrists at the hollow of the throat. For now, the air carries dust, cold iron, and a trace of candle wax from whatever stub burned out during the night. You notice your hands as you dry your face on the edge of your nightdress, still mostly soft. There's a myth that hands tell everything, but yours have learned how to hide the story. You stand and dress in layers automatic. Chemise stays, not the tight ones, just enough to shape the waist. Stockings pinned. Petticoat. A brown work dress you've worn every Tuesday for a month. The shoulder seam is coming loose again. You'll mend it with a borrowed needle, and whatever thread is left in the shared tin. There's no mirror in the room, just a square of polished tin nailed to the wall. It shows enough. You smooth your hair back and twist it into a bun by touch alone. There are no drawers, only pegs. You hang yesterday's shift and hope it dries by nightfall. Then you open the door and pause. The hallway is dim lit faintly by the graying morning. The wallpaper out here is peeling yellow roses, barely holding their shape. You breathe in slowly. Coal smoke. Bread baking somewhere below. The fire has been lit in the kitchen. That's a good sign. Downstairs, Marjorie, older Marjorie, the housekeeper you were named after by accident, has probably been up since 4. She lights the fires, boils water, and starts the bread if cook is running late. Some say she was once a client's wife thrown out and taken in. Others say she's just always been here. Either way, she's never late, and she never smiles. Your boots make the smallest creaks as you descend. The stair treads are worn into shallow dips from decades of steps. You grip the banister loosely, your fingers, remembering the time Sarah missed a step and twisted her ankle, ruining a whole week of income. At the bottom of the stairs, you pause outside the parlor. It's quiet. The gas lights haven't been turned on yet, and the curtains are still drawn. The furniture is neat velvet cushions. Plumped oil lamps, cleaned ash swept from the hearth. Everything reset like a stage before the play begins. There's a comfort in that. In the kitchen, someone's humming faintly. You follow the sound. The room is warm, and the kettle on the stove has just begun to rattle. You take a chipped cup from the shelf, pour just enough to warm your hands. Real coffee. That's one of the things that keeps this house in business. Not just the girls, not just the rooms, but the illusion of luxury coffee-clean sheets once a week, a silver tray in the front room. It's all smoke and velvet, but men pay for the illusion. As you stand by the hearth, your fingers curled around the cup, you think briefly of the women who came before. The ones who slept in your room wore the same dress, watched the same wallpaper fade. You wonder if they felt the same ache behind the eyes, the same heaviness in the chest that sleep never quite erased. You won't dwell on it. Not now. The day has only just begun. There are linens to fold, stairs to sweep, boots to polish. The clients won't come for another few hours, but the house must always look like it's waiting. The house must always look like it's fine. You take another sip. The coffee is strong and a little bitter. Better than most. You've heard of other places, lower houses in East London, where the girls start their day with gin. Not coffee. One even used diluted laudanum to stay calm between customers. You're not sure what that says, except that maybe this house isn't the worst. That's something. You set your cup down and feel the floor warm beneath your feet from the fire. And for just a second, you allow yourself the smallest luxury, standing still. You breathe in slow and steady, and then you exhale. This is your place, your rhythm, your morning. Your 24 hours have begun. You move through the hallway like breaths slow and even past closed doors, with their muffled histories still asleep behind them. The wallpaper curls a little more at each corner than it did the week before, and there's a fine layer of dust along the skirting that hasn't yet been wiped away, though it will be soon. Cleanliness here is not about sanitation so much as illusion. The house is kept just tidy enough to appear respectable, but not so polished as to make anyone uncomfortable with what it actually is. The floorboards shift beneath your boots with a familiar complaint as you step into the shared washroom at the end of the corridor. You're the first one here. That's always been your habit, partly for the quiet, but mostly for the water. It's not replaced often, and by midday it takes on a cloudiness you'd rather not get to know. But now, just after dawn, the pitcher on the stand holds water, so still it might as well be glass. You already know what you'll find when you touch it. Your fingers brush the surface, and the film of ice cracks delicately like sugar glass. A white rim circles the basin where it met the cold air overnight. You pour a little into the bowl with care, listening to the gentle splash echo against the porcelain. Even the sound is cold. You brace yourself, then bend and splash it over your face. It hits, like always, swift and merciless. Not just cold, but biting like it has purpose. You don't gasp this time, though your spine stiffens and your breath stutters. The cold is part of the morning now, as essential as the corset and the broom. You cup another handful. This one lingers on your skin before dripping into your collar. The water trickles down your back in a fine, cruel line. You wipe it away with the cloth laid out for that purpose, already damp from yesterday. No towels, just squares of old linen, shared between the girls hung to dry and used again. You've learned to fold yours so the cleanest corner hits your cheek. It's moments like these face-dripping teeth, clenched fingers numb, that you remember hot water exists. That somewhere not far from this city, people greet the morning with porcelain bathtubs and warm towels laid gently on warming racks. There's no envy in the thought, not really. Just a sort of passing recognition that the world is large, and the comfort it offers is unevenly scattered. You reach for the tin comb tucked beside the basin. It catches on your hair at the crown, pulling just enough to sharpen your attention. You work it through, slowly separating strands still tangled from sleep. Your scalp prickles where the comb runs close, and you think briefly of the girl who left last spring, with lice so bad she had to shave everything. They said she got work in a factory afterward. Better wages, fewer expectations, but worse hours. Your hair is still thick for now, and you're careful with it. You twist it back, tuck the ends beneath the coil, and fix it in place with one of the brass pins you guard like coins. On days like this, you move methodically everything in order, not rushed, but not lazy. The kind of pace that lets you feel steady even if nothing else is. Behind you the floor groans, and another set of footsteps shuffles into the hallway, light, careful ones. Probably Ada. She always rises after you and never says a word. You like her for that. She nods if she sees you, nothing more. She keeps her secrets folded tightly around her, like one of her shawls always smelling faintly of violet powder, and something metallic. You nod back, or you will when you leave. For now, you finish your washing. You rinse your wrists, your neck, just behind your ears. These are the places customers notice most, you've learned. A clean neck gives the illusion of an untouched woman, even if the rest of you is tired to the bone. You dry with the other half of the cloth, and tuck it neatly beside the pitcher again, folded like it was never used. It's the little gestures that keep order in a place like this. The quiet is absolute. Downstairs there's no sound of voices yet, just the creak of someone opening the back door for air. The kitchen stove likely glows now, and Marjorie may be cutting the heel off yesterday's bread to warm for breakfast. You'll have a slice if there's enough. If not, tea will do. You remind yourself not to linger. Time here isn't so much measured by clocks as by movement. When one thing ends, another begins. You step out into the hallway again. Boots light, apron straightened, dress tidy. You pass Ada in the doorway and give her a nod. She doesn't smile, but she returns it just a brief glance, before slipping past you like a shadow in lace. You don't return to your room just yet. Instead, you head toward the small back stair that leads down past the storage cupboard and into the quiet inner passage that connects to the laundry and pantry. This stair is rarely used by guests. It smells of damp brick and boiled starch. But you've always liked it. It's hidden, forgotten. A place where you can be just a girl moving through a cold house rather than anything more elaborate. There's a small window on the landing, its panes fogged at the edges, its frame painted shut years ago. Through it, the city is starting to emerge from its mist. A rag cart rattles past, horse slow and plodding. A woman with a market basket crosses the street, head down. London doesn't roar in the morning, it creeps. It seeps in like the damp through the bricks into your breath, until you don't even notice it anymore. You pause here just for a moment, resting your fingertips on the chilly sill. The chill runs up your arms again, but you don't flinch. You're used to the bite of cold now. You think of how the women before you must have done the same thing, breaking the ice in their wash basin each morning, wiping their face with the same stiff cloth, combing the same tangles from the same aching scalp. And maybe that's why the house always seems to know what to expect. It's done this before. It's watched 100 girls move like this. It remembers the cold and the quiet, and the practiced stillness. You wonder how many girls have cried into that same cracked basin, or whispered their own name just to remember how it sounds. You never do that. Not anymore. Instead, you tuck a stray hair behind your ear and step down the last few stairs into the early smell of bread crust and brewing tea. And you remind yourself it's just another Tuesday. The kitchen is still quiet by the time you reach it, warm now thanks to the fire Marjorie coaxed from a reluctant pile of damp coal. The heat gathers in the lower half of the room, rising slowly, curling beneath the hem of your dress, and resting there as if unsure whether to climb higher. You press your back gently against the tiled wall near the hearth cup, still clutched in both hands. A draft slips in under the door, but you don't move. For now, this one square of warmth is enough. There's no formal breakfast, just bread and whatever's left from the day before. You break off a corner of the crusty loaf sitting in its cloth on the counter, cooled to the point of stiffness, but still edible, and chew slowly. Someone's left a smear of plum jam on the knife, a small luxury. You resist the urge to lick it off. No one speaks. This is an unspoken rule of the morning. Early hours are claimed by silence, not small talk. The other women enter one by one, moving quietly, dressing their cups with sugar if there is any left. They nod. Occasionally someone sighs, but that's all. It's a kind of reverence, not for the work to come, but for the fragile space before it arrives. You finish your coffee and rinse the cup, placing it upside down on the wooden rack near the sink. The ritual feels practiced enough to dull thought, and maybe that's the point. Every step you take in this place, every chore, every gesture has been done before hundreds of times by women with calloused feet and quiet eyes. There's a rhythm to it, a choreography of endurance. You head back upstairs, passing a young girl named Nell, scrubbing at a soot mark near the baseboard. Her sleeves are pushed up, revealing thin wrists red from the lye soap. She doesn't look up. You remember when she arrived a little too cheerful, a little too sure she wouldn't end up like the rest. That was 2 months ago. No one is cheerful by month 3. In your room, the light has shifted again. It's fuller now, though still dulled by London's ever-present haze. You pull open the warped drawer and take out the second corset, the one for presentation. It's tighter than the first, with straighter boning and fresher lacing, the kind customers expect. You wrap it around your waist, pull the strings taut, and tie them with a practiced knot. There's a moment where your ribs protest, but you ignore it. Breathing shallowly becomes second nature eventually. The dress for daytime customers is more refined than the workwear, but far less elaborate than evening attire. Pale blue with a high neck and decorative buttons down the front, faux mother of pearl. You step into it carefully, easing the sleeves over your arms, smoothing the fabric over your hips. The lining is scratchy in places. You'll feel it all day. Your boots are polished but worn at the heel. The left one squeaks faintly when you walk something that used to bother you. Now it's like a familiar tick in your gait, predictable, reassuring in a strange way. The mirror in the corner reflects your full figure now. You adjust the neckline slightly, then move to your hair. You undo the bun you tied earlier and brush it out, sectioning it neatly before adding a small artificial piece, a curled switch saved from another girl who left last summer. It gives volume where yours has thinned. You twist it into the base of your own hair and secure it with pins, then smooth the outer layers to blend. From the dressing box beneath your bed, you take out a vial of lavender water. Just a dab at each wrist, one behind each ear. Enough to suggest care, but not wealth. That's the illusion, always well kept, not extravagant. Natural beauty takes time, and you've learned exactly how much. At the basin, you dampen a cloth and press it to your cheeks. It brings a slight flush to your skin, just enough to look alive. No rouge, not yet. Rouge is for after dark. This is morning, and morning demands subtlety. The room is quiet again, save for the occasional sound, drifting in from below the clink of teacups, the low murmur of voices, the scrape of a chair across stone. You stand still just for a moment and look at yourself fully. You don't look bad. That's something. There are days when the circles under your eyes are less forgiving, or when your jaw feels too sharp, your mouth too tight. But not today. Today you could pass for someone who had a decent night's sleep, who ate well, who had choices. But you didn't. You never do. Not really. Still, you nod at your reflection because it's all you can do and step into the hallway again. Downstairs, the parlor will need dusting. The cushions must be plumped, the drapes adjusted to let in just the right amount of light. Too much, and the peeling paint shows. Too little, and the room feels like a tomb. Mrs. Latch, the woman who manages the house, says it's all about balance. She used to work in a hotel and carries herself like she still does with a clipboard in her mind, and a schedule no one ever sees. You pass her office door as you head down, and you can hear her inside the scratch of a pen on paper, the occasional clink of a keyring. She keeps a small notebook where she tracks everything. Appointments, payments, names, nicknames, descriptions. Never full names. That would be dangerous. Just enough to keep things running. Her desk drawer has a little brass lock, but you suspect she wouldn't even need it. No one dares touch her things. In the parlor, you begin the process of making the space look untouched. You straighten the lace runner on the table, adjust the angle of the framed prints on the wall, cheap reproductions of Italian landscapes. There's a small shelf of books chosen for appearance poetry mostly, and a Bible that no one's ever opened. You replace the dried flowers in the vase with fresh ones from the bucket in the back. Carnations this week, cheap, hardy, and good at holding color, even when the water turns. You trim the stems, arrange them in a way that looks accidental, and wipe the lip of the vase with your sleeve. When it's done, the room looks like it's always looked. Slightly faded, a little too warm, and perfectly calculated to seem forgettable. The kind of place where men feel comfortable forgetting who they are. You sit for a moment on the corner of the settee, smoothing your skirt, resting your hands in your lap. The silence is almost heavy now, like the pause before a bell rings. Somewhere upstairs you hear Ada's footsteps, followed by the brief thump of a door closing. You don't look at the clock, but you know what time it is. Soon someone will knock. 2 short taps, then a pause, then another, and the day your day will truly begin. The knock comes exactly as expected. 2 short, hesitant taps, a pause, then one more. Not loud, not confident. The kind that pretends not to want to be heard, though it always is. You don't answer the door. That's not your job. Nell, the youngest of the housemaids, scurries from the kitchen to open it. She's barely more than a child, really, and her duties stop at sweeping stairs and answering doors. Still, she bows her head like someone 40 years older as she pulls open the latch and lets the man inside. You don't turn to look. There's no need. You can hear everything you need in the sound of his shoes, soft-soled, well-maintained. Wealth, or at least the appearance of it. The way he clears his throat suggests nerves but not guilt. He's been here before or somewhere like it. He's greeted by Mrs. Latch herself, her voice just audible from the hallway. Warm professional, but with edges so subtle they cut before you feel them. She ushers him into the front parlor where clients wait. Not your parlor, the other one where the chairs have deeper cushions, and the oil lamps burn slightly longer. He's offered tea or sherry, depending on the hour, and a selection of magazines fanned out on the side table to maintain the illusion of leisure. The whole process takes less than 2 minutes. You know because you count. While he waits, you go about your tasks. There's the second mirror in the hallway to clean the little brass hook by the stairs to polish. Your hands move independently of thought, wiping and straightening, as your mind listens carefully for which girl Mrs. Latch will call. Not you. Not yet. Marjorie passes by with a tray of scones more for appearance than consumption. She nods to you and continues on her gait, measured her apron clean, and folded perfectly at the waist. She's never once dropped a dish. She says that's how you lose respect in this house. Not by the job itself, but by doing it clumsily. Another knock. This one louder, less precise. You recognize that rhythm too, Mr. Boothby. A solicitor who prefers small talk over service. He'll spend half an hour discussing the weather and the other half examining his fingernails, while the girl he's chosen sits silently beside him on the settee. He never removes his gloves. This is how the morning passes quietly without drama. You're called eventually just before the bells strike 11. Your name isn't spoken, just a glance, a nod from Mrs. Latch, and you rise, smoothing your skirt as you go. The client is seated near the window, looking out, but not really seeing. His hat rests on his knee, his gloves already folded beside it. He's middle-aged average in every way, and his face flickers with relief when he sees you, not recognition, but ease. You are what he expected. That's all he wanted. You greet him with a smile, practiced but soft. No words. You offer your hand not to shake, but simply as a gesture of readiness. He rises and you lead him upstairs. You know which room is prepped, the one with the lace curtain that doesn't quite reach the sill. Inside, the bed has been made with fresh linen. The hearth swept the air, perfumed faintly with bergamot oil and burnt sugar. The interaction is brief, not rushed, just practiced. You've learned how to move efficiently without seeming mechanical, how to respond to gesture, not request. There's no intimacy, only proximity. A kind of closeness that has no weight to it. When it's over, he dresses quickly, places a coin on the mantel without looking at you, and leaves with the quietest click of the door. You wait a moment. Listen to his footsteps retreat down the stairs. Then you stand, straighten the sheets, and wash your hands at the basin. The scent of bergamot clings to your fingers, sweet but sharp. You don't think about him again. Downstairs, the rhythm of the house continues. You take the sheet to the laundry bin. A new girl, Liza, is there, already folding towels with fingers still clumsy from inexperience. She doesn't look up, and you don't interrupt. She'll learn the pattern in time. The house operates like a closed system, every part moving in response to another. The lamps are trimmed, the stairs swept, the brass doorknobs polished until they shine. It's easy to forget in this hush of constant motion that what happens here exists outside the laws that govern most homes. But the law does know. In fact, during the mid-19th century, the British government had already taken specific interest in houses like this one. In 1864, just a few years after the day you're living now, the first of the Contagious Diseases Acts was passed. Designed to control venereal disease in military towns, it allowed police to detain and forcibly examine women suspected of prostitution. Not men, just women. The law gave no protection, only surveillance. And though this house might sit in one of the quieter boroughs of London, its women were never fully beyond the reach of the law. Still, for now, the house breathes on. You carry a fresh sheet back upstairs, the linen starchy and cool from the laundry. The sun has climbed slightly higher, its weak rays slanting through the windows and catching the dust in the air. There's something delicate about this time of day, late morning, when everything is in motion, but nothing feels hurried. You pause briefly at the top of the stairs and glance toward the window. Outside, across the street, a woman passes by with a basket of laundry on her hip. Her dress is plain, her bonnet askew. She doesn't look up. No one does. That's part of the arrangement. People know what this house is. Or at least they know enough not to ask. But if they did look, they might notice that this house too smells faintly of soap and lavender. They might notice the polished door knocker, or the way the curtains change every Monday. It's all intentional. Appearances matter. Cleanliness especially matters. There's an old superstition that customers will only return to a house that smells better than their own. That's why Mrs. Latch has the stairwell washed in vinegar water once a week. It cuts through the coal smoke and leaves behind a faint sharpness tart, clean, memorable. It isn't perfume, but it signals care, and care, even when feigned, can be comforting. You return to your room and place the clean linen on the foot of the bed. You smooth it once, twice, then let it rest. Your stomach reminds you gently that you've eaten little, but there's time for a crust later. The window is fogging slightly from within. You lean closer, draw a circle with your fingertip and peer through the glass. Another client approaches. This one walks slower with purpose. He'll knock soon. You'll hear it, the familiar rhythm. And when you do, you'll rise again, smooth your dress again, and become the version of yourself he's expecting. This is not drama. It is not tragedy. It is routine. The house breathes. And so do you. You don't hear the knock this time. Just the sound of footsteps moving through the hallway downstairs, measured confident the creak of leather soles, and the subtle hush of wool brushing against wool. Someone speaks softly in the entryway, followed by the gentle click of the parlor door closing. You've learned how to read the shape of a client by sound alone, and this one is no different. He isn't in a rush. He isn't new. There's a particular rhythm to men who have done this before. You remain upstairs for now. There's a system in place, a quiet choreography you've memorized, without ever being taught. You don't enter the parlor until you're called. And when the door opens, it's not for your name, but for your presence. Mrs. Latch appears in the corridor a few moments later. She doesn't gesture or speak, just meets your eyes, gives the slightest nod, then turns and walks away. That's enough. You smooth your bodice once more, pat the twist of hair behind your ear, and follow. The parlor is quiet when you step in. Sunlight filters through gauze curtains, casting gentle lines across the rug. The room is warm thanks to the fire someone remembered to stoke earlier, and smells faintly of beeswax and bergamot, with a trace of coal beneath. Always the coal. No scent ever quite covers it. He stands as you enter, which is unusual. Not many bother. He's mid-30s maybe, with the look of a man who has been told often that he is reasonable and respectable. His eyes move toward you, then away, as if he's not sure whether to meet your gaze or look anywhere else. He smiles, but it fades quickly. No names. That's part of the understanding here. Names complicate things. Names carry weight. Instead, you offer a small nod, low respectful, but not servile, and turn toward the stairs, trusting that he will follow. He does. You lead him up the steps without looking back. Not because you're being coy, but because it's easier that way. Eye contact makes it personal. Personal doesn't help. The room you've prepared is quiet and clean. The bedspread has been straightened. The hearth swept. You lit a candle a few minutes ago, not for light, but for scent. A soft woody blend that smells vaguely of pine and warm stone. He lingers near the doorway for a breath or two, as many do, as if there's still time to change his mind. As if standing on the threshold makes it easier to pretend. But eventually he steps inside, sets his gloves on the table, and begins to undo the buttons on his coat. You move with slow familiarity, helping where needed, guiding where expected. The entire exchange takes no more than 15 minutes. There's no conversation, no questions. His hands are clean, and his breath smells faintly of brandy and peppermints. He avoids your eyes, and you let him. He isn't rough, but he isn't gentle either. He is efficient, almost careful in the way that suggests practice, rather than tenderness. He finishes, rises, and dresses without a word. When he leaves, he places a coin larger than standard on the corner of the washstand, just beneath the cup of water you poured earlier. You hear the faint jingle of his pocket watch chain as he disappears back down the stairs, and then the room is quiet again. You sit at the edge of the bed for a moment, adjusting the skirts that have twisted beneath you. Your fingers run across the hem, smoothing fabric that doesn't want to lie flat. Then you rise, pour a fresh basin of water from the pitcher, and wash your hands slowly. The water has cooled since morning, but it's clean enough. You rinse twice, once for cleanliness, once for form. You change the linen on the bed. A new sheet from the cupboard tucked precisely, corners smoothed. You blot the candle wax that dripped too far. You take the coin and slip it into the pouch, sewn inside your corset, a tiny stitched pocket near your ribs. Most of the girls use theirs. Purses go missing. Bodices do not. Downstairs you rejoin the house. The air smells of food, now boiled potatoes and fried onions. Not much, but enough to fill the space. You pass through the hall toward the rear where the kitchen table is set for lunch. Not a formal affair. Just bread bits of meat and cold tea. The girls gather loosely, seating themselves wherever space appears. You choose the stool by the corner between the pantry door and the stove. Across from you sits Agnes, her sleeves rolled high and a faint flush on her cheeks. She looks tired. Not in the way you look when you've had a long shift, but in the way that sinks deeper into the bones. You think she's unwell, though she won't say it. She picks at her bread, slowly pressing crumbs into a neat line on the edge of her plate. No one speaks much. This hour belongs to recovery, not just from clients, but from silence itself. The kind of silence that hums just beneath the noise of footsteps and laughter. The kind that waits until you're alone, then wraps around your ribs and pulls. There's comfort in the small rituals. Spreading margarine thinly across stale crust. Drinking tea that's more leaf than liquid. Sharing glances that say everything and nothing at once. There's a new girl now, too. Her name is Maud, and she doesn't yet know how to sit without tension. Her back is ramrod straight, her knees pressed together like a child's in church. She nods too much and speaks too fast, and everyone knows she won't last unless she learns to pace herself. No one tells her this aloud. It's one of the many things you're expected to absorb by osmosis. After lunch, the table is cleared and the girls scatter. Some go to rest, some to clean. You take your tea and sit by the window in the back corridor. The glass is cold under your palm as you lean into it slightly. Outside, the street carries on without pause. A fruit seller calls out across the alleyway. A constable tips his hat to a woman in blue. A boy chases his own shadow past the front stoop. No one looks toward the house. That's always the case. This house, like so many others in this part of London, is part of the architecture of silence. It exists in plain sight, but is never seen. Not truly. And that's the arrangement, comfort for a price discretion, in exchange for invisibility. You sip your tea and wonder briefly what your life might have looked like in another neighborhood, another season, another time. You don't do this often. It doesn't help. But today the thought arrives uninvited, like a draft through a window left ajar. Maybe you would have been a dressmaker. You're good with a needle. Or a midwife if the schooling had been possible. But the schooling wasn't, and the money wasn't. And the dressmaking paid 3 pence for 12 hours and a bleeding thumb. This job at least pays. Not well, but regularly. There's a stillness in your chest now, like a bird resting its wings between flights. You finish the tea, rinse the cup, and return it to the shelf. Outside the parlor, the bell chimes again, faint and deliberate. Another guest has arrived. You smooth your hair, adjust your sleeves, and become once more what the house requires you to be. You find your way back to the kitchen by habit, not intention. It's one of the few spaces in the house that belongs more to the girls than the guests, though even that is relative. Here the air always smells faintly of boiled leaves and scorched bread. The heavy tea kettle whistles softly from its place on the range, and a tray of chipped china cups rests near the edge of the table waiting to be filled. You don't expect conversation. That's not how this hour works. Around you, the other women settle into their places like well-worn books on a shelf, not slumped or listless, but quiet, efficient, resigned. There is a rhythm to their movements. Pour stir sip. Tea made from second-use leaves, the bitterness dulled slightly with a spoonful of molasses when available. You take your cup and sit beside Clara, who always claims the stool nearest the back wall. She says it's warmer here, but really it's because she likes to keep her back covered, just in case. No one talks about the men. Not directly. Not yet. Not here. Instead, there are murmurs about the weather. London's winter seems determined to claw through every window pane this week, or whether the laundry will dry before the frost sets in again. Clara mutters something about a customer who wore the same cologne as her uncle. Someone chuckles, but it dies quickly, as most jokes do in this room. You blow across your tea. Steam curls against your lips and vanishes. The warmth seeps slowly into your hands, spreading inward. This is not comfort exactly, but it's a ritual, and rituals matter when so much else does not belong to you. Across the table, Maud tries to break off a piece of dry biscuit with her teeth and winces when it catches the edge of her gum. She's still learning not to grimace. You offer her a softer one from the tin without comment, and she takes it with a small nod. No one praises you. No one thanks you. But you're not here for that. Here, kindness travels without fanfare, like heat from a hearth. Silent, steady, understood. The minutes pass slowly. A clock ticks from the hallway. The sound nearly lost under the layers of domestic noise. The creak of wooden chairs. The scrape of spoons against porcelain. The sighs of tired women who have learned the value of silence in a world that never offers them quiet. One of the girls, Martha, leans against the doorframe arms, crossed eyes half-lidded. She used to be a milliner, she once told you. Good with ribbon work. But her eyesight started to go from straining over candlelight, and when the shop closed for good, she had nowhere else to turn. She drinks her tea in 2 gulps, and walks out again, the hem of her dress brushing the door as she goes. You wonder sometimes how many of the girls here came from respectable trades that paid in hunger and blisters. Seamstresses, maids, laundresses. The lie Victorian society liked to tell was that women chose this life because they were loose or lazy. The truth was far simpler and less scandalous. They were tired of starving. And even here the earnings were precarious. A girl might take home a few shillings a week if she had regulars, maybe a little more with tips. But once the rent was deducted, along with food and clothes, and the little fees for doctor's visits, or broken dishes or missing hairpins, the profit often shrank to nothing. It was not the life of vice that moralists warned about. It was the life of arithmetic. You finish your tea, slowly letting it cool just enough to dull your tongue. The stillness around you deepens. Occasionally a voice lifts to mention someone's aunt with chilblains, or a funny letter from a cousin in the north. But the talk drifts like smoke, and vanishes just as easily. The energy in the room hovers somewhere between rest and readiness. It's this middle space, neither work nor sleep, that wears you down most. Eventually, someone mentions that the doctor is expected this afternoon. That sobers the air a little, as it always does. Not out of fear exactly, but because it reminds everyone of the ledger, the invisible one. The one that reduces your body to a list of boxes to be ticked, skin to be examined, and temperatures to be recorded. But that comes later. For now, the kettle whistles again. You pour a second cup. Somewhere behind you, a door closes. You don't look. You don't need to. Every door in this house has a distinct sound. The hallway one thuds. The parlor one whispers. The front door sighs. The sound you just heard was the linen closet, someone taking new sheets. Likely for the room next to yours. You think of the morning's visitor. The coin tucked away. The soft dent in the mattress where he lay. The faint scent of his cologne still clinging to your dress. Then you put the thought aside. There will be others. Always others. On the mantel behind you sits a brass clock polished weekly. It's ticking quiet but steady. Above it hangs a small print of a pastoral scene sheep on a hillside, trees. In bloom, a young girl with a bonnet and a picnic basket. It's faded now, edges curled. No one remembers who put it there. Perhaps it was Mrs. Latch back when she was still called matron, and wore her hair up tighter than her apron strings. Or maybe it's been here longer still, hung by someone who thought it might bring comfort. You don't mind it. The sheep are pleasant enough. There's a kind of blessing in the uneventful moments when the room is still. The tea is warm and no one expects anything from you. These are the minutes you collect like small treasures, not because they're extraordinary, but because they're yours. And then, like always, the peace begins to thin. A voice calls softly from the front. A bell rings faintly from the parlor. The house begins to breathe again, stirring from its pause. You drain your cup, place it in the washing basin, and smooth your skirt. Back to your duties. Back into the rhythm. Even now, some historians debate whether the women in these houses had any meaningful agency. The answer is both simpler and more difficult. They had just enough choice to survive, and just enough imagination to pretend it mattered. But that conversation will wait for another day. For now, you follow the sound of the parlor bell. Your steps quiet, your mind calm. It is nearly time for the doctor. The hallway has grown colder, even though the fireplace in the parlor is still burning. It's the sort of cold that doesn't come from weather alone. It arrives with the quiet footsteps of Mrs. Fairley, the housekeeper, as she opens the front door to let the doctor in. No one announces him. No one needs to. His presence ripples through the house like the first tremor before an earthquake. You've already started straightening your dress before anyone says a word. The others do the same. Corsets or checked sleeves, adjusted collars tugged into place. Not because it makes a difference, not really, but because it feels better to be in control of something, however small. You wait in the kitchen until your name is called. One by one, the girls disappear into Mrs. Aldridge's sitting room, which has been repurposed for the occasion. The floral curtains are drawn tight. A writing desk has been cleared for medical instruments, and a screen has been set up for modesty. Not that modesty matters much in this life, but it's part of the routine. Like a curtain in a play you've seen too many times. When your turn comes, you step through the door and hear it close softly behind you. The doctor is already seated, spectacles perched halfway down his nose, ledger open, fountain pen ready. He greets you with a nod, no names exchanged, just a line on a page waiting to be filled. You sit behind the screen and begin undressing. The air bites at your skin, though the fire in the hearth crackles helpfully. You place your clothes on the chair, careful to fold them as you were taught. No conversation, just movements. The doctor's voice is neutral, rehearsed, efficient. He asks questions about your appetite, your sleep, any unusual discharges, pains, fevers. You answer quietly, factually. The tone of the room never changes, neither intimate nor hostile, just business. It's a strange experience being reduced to a series of observations. He examines you with the same detachment he'd give a horse before purchase, or a loaf of bread before it goes stale. He notes down measurements, observations. Nothing alarming this time. No raised temperatures, no signs of lesions or boils. He murmurs something to Mrs. Aldridge, who nods. In the Victorian era, brothels like this one were required to submit their workers for regular medical inspection. Under the Contagious Diseases Acts, a law passed in the 1860s, initially enforced in naval ports, but later extended to major cities like London. The intent, at least publicly, was to limit the spread of venereal disease among soldiers and seamen. But the enforcement was uneven, and often cruel. Women could be detained and examined forcibly. Some resisted. Others, like the girls in this house, complied quietly, understanding that refusal could mean eviction or worse. But here in this private room, with the smell of carbolic soap and the rustle of paper, the law feels less like a moral mission and more like bookkeeping. You are not a woman, not a person. You are a page, an entry, a clean bill that can be sold again tomorrow. After the examination, you redress with care. Your fingers are cold, making the buttons harder than they should be. The doctor gives a small hum of approval and marks a symbol beside your name, a star perhaps, or a dash. You're not sure. You've never seen the ledger yourself, and you suspect you never will. As you rise to leave, you glance at the small case on the desk. Glass bottles, rubber tubing instruments polished to a dull shine. Tools of reassurance, or surveillance, sometimes both. When you return to the kitchen, Clara lifts her eyes just long enough to see your face. You give her the tiniest nod. "Fine," it says. "Still me." She returns to her tea, satisfied. Martha goes in next. She's pale today. Not unusual, but her cough hasn't faded either. You wonder if the doctor will notice. Or worse, if he'll mark something beside her name. A letter. A warning. The unspoken truth in places like this is that once your health begins to decline, your days are numbered not out of cruelty, but practicality. A girl who can't work is a burden, and the house cannot afford many burdens. There are whispers about girls sent away to the country to recover. Sometimes they come back. Sometimes they don't. You wrap your shawl tighter around your shoulders and return to your room. The mirror is fogged slightly from the wash basin steam, but you wipe a space with your sleeve and study your reflection. Still the same woman, still the same face. But the eyes, perhaps they've changed. They hold more than they used to. Knowledge, tiredness, calculation. A rumor flickers in your memory. One of the newer girls claimed she'd once been asked to carry a calling card from a customer to a well-known doctor who specialized in remedies of a more private nature. The rich get silk gloves, she said, and we get vinegar and prayer. No one laughed. In the corner of your room sits a small locked chest. Inside are the few things that are truly yours: a hair comb, a coin pouch, a letter from your sister in Liverpool. The letter is soft with age, folded and refolded so many times the creases are permanent. You haven't written back. You wouldn't know what to say. Historians still argue whether these medical inspections offered genuine protection or merely served as a way to police women's bodies under the guise of public health. Some point to declining disease rates in port cities as evidence of effectiveness. Others highlight the hypocrisy. Men were never subject to similar scrutiny, despite being the primary clients. You return the letter to the chest and lock it. Downstairs, someone is laughing, a nervous sort of giggle that signals either anticipation or dread. You can't tell which. Both feel the same from a distance. You take a deep breath, steadying yourself against the day. The inspection is done. You're cleared, though the word feels as empty as the kettle in the kitchen. Clean enough to work, to serve, to survive. And so you do. You step back into the hall and close the door gently behind you. The moment is over, but the house is already humming again. Rooms being dusted, linens swapped, hair being pinned and cheeks being rouged. You rejoin the current without a ripple. Because here, time doesn't pause. It simply loops like a long sigh that never quite runs out. Somewhere between the final clink of the teacups and the first hiss of the gas lamps, the house shifts again. It's not abrupt. No bell rings. No one issues orders. But you feel it all the same, a subtle tightening in the air like a thread pulled gently taut. The day turns inward. Shadows stretch themselves across the floorboards. And upstairs the dressing begins. You return to your room with a small washcloth and a bowl of lukewarm water. There's no time or fuel for a proper bath, not tonight, but you manage a quick scrub at the wrists behind the ears, the bend of the knees. The lavender soap is nearly gone now, whittled to a crescent, but it still offers a brief scent of civility. You use it sparingly like a fine perfume. Your day dress is carefully folded and placed aside its stiff cotton, replaced by silk in a shade of soft brushed blue. Not new by any means, but cleaned, pressed, and touched, with a faint sheen under lamplight. You fasten the hooks and draw the bodice snug, the fabric whispering as it moves. There's satisfaction in the ritual. Not vanity exactly, but precision, control. The mirror chipped along the bottom shows a version of you that's more composed, more deliberate. You draw a comb through your hair, smoothing it into waves with a borrowed pomade that smells faintly of lemon. Tonight calls for the hairpiece, a bundle of curls pinned artfully above your own, giving the illusion of volume and richness. It's slightly itchy, but effective. A dusting of rice powder comes next, dabbed gently to even your complexion. A trace of carmine rouge follows, just enough to brighten the cheeks, nothing too bold. This house maintains a strict natural policy. Too much paint is frowned upon. The goal is illusion, not spectacle. You remember reading once, though you're not sure where, that in ancient Chinese court culture, a woman's face could be read like a book. Too much blush on the nose meant she was hiding shame. Lips too red signaled desperation. You've never seen such writings yourself, but the idea stuck with you that even artifice could be interpreted like scripture. Finally, the scent. Not perfume, never perfume, just a touch of rose water at the pulse points. Wrists, neck, behind the ears. Enough to suggest freshness without drawing attention. Downstairs, the parlor has been transformed. The heavy curtains are drawn tight, muting the world beyond. Gaslight flickers from wall sconces softened by silk shades into a honeyed glow. The fire in the hearth burns steadily, casting orange light over the rugs, the dark wood furniture, and the low glass table already set with a silver tray of spirits and a fresh-cut sprig of mint in a crystal vase. It is meant to feel elegant, intimate, warm. The illusion is deliberate and well practiced. Mrs. Aldridge is already seated, her presence quiet, but undeniable. She doesn't say much. She doesn't have to. Her posture, her glance, the way she adjusts the clock on the mantel. By 1 minute, it's all part of the choreography. You, Clara, and Martha descend one by one, steps careful, timing unconscious. Like dancers entering a stage they know by heart. The clients will arrive soon. Some will come with flowers or coins wrapped in handkerchiefs. Some will come without words, their needs evident, in the way they lean forward, eyes darting across the room like children in a sweet shop. The men vary. Widowers, merchants, clerks, foreigners. No one truly respectable, but few so degraded they must be refused. It's a quiet night so far. The first man arrives just after sunset. His boots are polished, but the soles are worn. His eyes are tired, but not cruel. He's greeted with practiced warmth, offered brandy, invited to sit by the fire. Clara handles this one. You catch her smile as she leads him by the hand toward the back parlor. A soft rustle of silk, then the door closes behind them. You pour yourself a small sherry, only a sip. Enough to soothe, not enough to blur. Alcohol is permitted, but watched. Some girls use it like armor, others like escape. You prefer clarity. Fog dulls your edge, and this life requires precision. As you sip, you catch sight of yourself in the parlor mirror. Not the bedroom mirror where flaws are visible. Here, in low lamplight and reflection softened by age, you almost look like someone else. Elegant, serene. You wonder who she might be in another life. This transformation is not just for the clients. It's for you. A soft mask you wear not to deceive, but to endure. You're reminded of something you once overheard at the Covent Garden Theatre, an actress backstage murmuring, "We perform to remember who we are." In your case, perhaps it's to forget. The brothel world of Victorian London thrived on such illusion. Legally ambiguous, morally precarious, it navigated a strange space between commerce and shadow. While public opinion fluctuated, the demand remained constant. By 1859, it was estimated that London had over 5,000 working prostitutes, many concentrated around areas like Soho, Covent Garden, and Whitechapel. But numbers only tell part of the story. In certain houses like this, one discretion was everything. No red lights, no outward signs, just polished windows, quiet footsteps, and a finely balanced social dance. Even the police, when they weren't bribed to look the other way, understood the unwritten rules. They targeted the desperate, the destitute, the women on the streets. Not houses like this? Not yet. You glance at the clock. Another quarter hour passed. 2 more clients arrive, one alone, one with a friend. Clara returns her face unreadable and takes a seat by the fire. You trade a look, brief, tired, amused. Then you rise and cross the room, your footsteps measured, your posture precise. The man you greet is in his 40s with a well-fed look and a ring on his smallest finger. You've seen that ring before, though not on him. It must have changed hands, or perhaps he bought it second-hand. No matter. You smile and offer your name, your working name, not your own. He smiles back. The play begins. There's something gently terrifying about how well you've learned this, how each gesture feels instinctive, how every line of dialogue has been polished by repetition. Not robotic, never that, but fluid, musical. Like a lullaby you sing without thinking. You lead him through the hall, pausing to adjust a flower in the vase. The detail isn't for him. It's for you. Something delicate, something your own. You close the door behind you. And once again the world outside disappears. Far across oceans and years, the gaslight glow fades into lantern light. You're no longer in London, but Kyoto, late 18th century Japan, under the polished veneer of the Edo period. And instead of a parlor lined with velvet chairs and brandy trays, you now find yourself inside a tea house within the cloistered world of the Yoshiwara, Japan's state-sanctioned pleasure district. The scent here isn't coal smoke, it's incense sandalwood and plum blossoms steeped into tatami mats and silken sleeves. You sit with legs folded beneath you, the weight of your kimono immense. It is your most elaborate, yet 12 layers each one in seasonal colors, crimson, pine green, and gold, its trailing hem embroidered with crane's waves and wisteria. Your hair is sculpted high and rigid, adorned with lacquered combs and dangling ornaments that chime faintly when you bow. This is not clothing for comfort. This is performance armor. You are not yet an oiran, the highest-ranking courtesan, but an aspiring taiyu. You have spent years in apprenticeship learning not just the rituals of serving tea and arranging flowers, but calligraphy, no theater shamisen, and the subtle rhythms of waka poetry. In Yoshiwara, beauty is merely the price of admission. The real currency is grace under scrutiny. A customer kneels across from you. He is a middle-ranking merchant, wealthy enough to afford a single evening of your time, but not so powerful that your meeting will be chronicled in the private books kept by the tea house. You smile politely. You quote a line of Basho. He replies with a metaphor drawn from the moon. This is foreplay, but not in the Western sense. Every syllable is a slow hand brushing fabric. Every pause in conversation a held breath. In this world, sex is not immediate nor guaranteed. The oiran was not to be touched unless she chose. In fact, the most elite among them often went months without intimacy, preferring patrons who desired the idea of her rather than the body. The performance was the product. This wasn't always the case. During the Tokugawa era, the shogunate tightly regulated these districts, insisting on hierarchy and decorum. The most refined courtesans were rare and expensive, sometimes charging what an average farmer might earn in a year for a single night. The price bought more than a body it paid for artifice, conversation, illusion, a beautifully orchestrated deception of companionship. But that illusion was sealed behind walls. The women here could not leave freely. The gates of Yoshiwara were literal and symbolic, locking the courtesans inside a life that often began as indentured servitude. Some were sold by desperate families. Others came hoping for glamour, only to find themselves shackled by contracts and rising debts. It is said some women began as Kamuro servant girls, at age 7 or 8, working until their mid-30s, when they were finally permitted to buy their freedom, if they ever could. There is a small, quiet cruelty in the illusion. The women were trained to appear indifferent to the outside world. But there are stories told in whispers of those who tried to escape, cutting their elaborate wigs, abandoning silk for rags, even pretending madness to be cast out. Few succeeded. And yet it was here behind the curtain that some women carved out their own quiet forms of power. An oiran might refuse a patron. She might support a struggling artist. She might even own a home beyond the district managed in secret by a trusted relative. These were exceptions, not the rule, but they remind you that history is rarely a single narrative. For every woman crushed under the system, another found a way to bend its shape, if only slightly. You lift the ceramic cup to your lips, the green tea still warm. The client across from you asks a question about your calligraphy. You answer modestly. He nods. Then slowly he unrolls a poem he brought with him a gift. It is not good. The metaphor is clumsy, the ink too heavy. But you accept it with a slight bow as if he had offered you a treasure. Later, as you remove your hair ornaments one by one, you stare at the ceiling of your room. Your limbs ache. Your scalp stings from the weight of your coiffure. The silk layers lie discarded across the tatami like fallen petals. For a moment, the glamour seems absurd. You think of a story you once heard from one of the older Taiyu, long since retired. A Dutch trader once asked her why she never left Yoshiwara. She had smiled and answered, "Because I have too many shoes for one road." You never understood that phrase fully, not then. You might now. Historians still debate whether the high-ranking courtesans of Japan held genuine power, or were merely gilded prisoners. The answer, as usual, may lie somewhere in between. Some women cultivated patrons who would eventually help them gain their freedom. Others never saw the gates open again. And yet in the faint ring of your hair ornaments, and the artful bend of your wrist as you pour tea, there is a kind of quiet defiance. A language spoken in glances, a refusal to vanish. As the lamps are extinguished, you lie on your futon gaze, following the shape of the ceiling beams overhead. The house is silent now, only the wind stirring the paper screens. And just like that, the lantern light fades. Now the paper screens of Kyoto vanish, and in their place rise the paneled doors and velvet drapes of a salon in 18th century Paris. The scent changes from plum incense to the powdery sweetness of rosewater and wine-soaked upholstery. You're in the Rue de Richelieu, just steps from the Comédie Française. This is a maison de rendezvous, one of the city's famed luxury brothels, though no sign hangs outside. To the passing world, it appears to be a noblewoman's home, perhaps a duchess fond of late suppers. But you are no duchess. You are a courtesan and elegante, one of the well-kept few who serve not the city's masses, but its ministers, diplomats, poets, and financiers. And tonight you're waiting in the gold-lit drawing room, corseted and powdered, sipping a lukewarm glass of champagne that no one expects you to finish. Your dress is pale blue silk, stitched with tiny white violets, a costly ensemble arranged by your patron. The sheer volume of fabric around your legs would seem comedic to anyone unfamiliar with the expectations of the evening. You're perched not sitting on a carved armchair, a swan-necked pose. It hurts your back, but elegance requires discomfort. There's a knock at the side door, a rhythmic tap-tap that tells you who it is before the butler even opens it. The Marquis de la Chance. Again. He enters with the air of a man used to being noticed. Powdered wig perfectly set his satin breeches molded like a second skin. His smile is practiced half amusement, half conquest. He greets you not with words, but with an approving look, as if you were an oil painting he commissioned last spring. The evening unfolds in careful measures. First a toast, then idle conversation about the latest pamphlets mocking the king's mistress. You know the names they toss around: Madame de Pompadour, Madame du Barry. Your own name will never reach such heights, and you're glad. Fame comes with its own punishments. The guillotine remembers. Later, when the Marquis reclines and begins to flatter your décolletage, more than your opinions, you nod. Gracefully pivot the topic to his beloved hunting dogs, and smile with vague interest. This is part of the work, balancing attention and indifference. Being available without being easy. Intelligent without seeming ambitious. A fiction within a fiction. In this world, appearances are everything, and not just your rouge or the artificial beauty patch on your cheek, but the performance of comfort, the illusion of mutual desire. Brothels like this one were not sordid dens, they were theater, and you were both lead actress and set dressing. But behind the satin and banter danger lurked. These houses operated under a fragile social contract, tolerated but not protected. If a nobleman decided to cheat you or harm you, the law might shrug. And if the church decided to tighten its grip, you could be outcast overnight. That's why madams here were more like managers than Madonnas. They had books to balance bribes to maintain, and girls to keep polished and safe. A curious truth, many courtesans were among the most literate women in Paris. Books flowed through these salons like wine. A wealthy client might lend you volumes of Voltaire or Rousseau, not because he thought you needed enlightenment, but because quoting philosophy in bed was seen as chic. You once even corrected a duke's misquotation of Diderot, and he looked at you as if you just performed a card trick. Historians still debate whether courtesans shaped political discourse from the shadows, or simply echoed the men who paid them. Some believe the salons doubled as informal intelligence hubs where pillow talk led to cabinet whispers. Others argue the influence was overstated, a fantasy, spun by men who liked to believe themselves seduced into diplomacy. What is certain is this brothels were part of Paris's social engine. In 1775 alone, there were over 200 known maisons of varying status, from damp alley dens to grand residences like this one. And while lower-class workers often lived short, brutal lives, a successful courtesan might secure a house servant, even a pension, if she played her cards just right. Still, you know how quickly the wind turns. The revolution is not far off. You've heard whispers of unrest, of rising bread prices, and angry mobs. A few girls in the house have quietly sold their jewels and sent money back to rural families. The Marquis jokes that women will rule France next. You laugh politely. Inside, you wonder what that would look like. The Marquis has left. You unlace your corset with practiced fingers. The wig is next off comes the towering poof, revealing your own hair beneath damp and flattened. You wash with rose water and soft linen cloths, trying not to let the image in the mirror startle you. The face looks like yours, but plainer. Or perhaps just real. A servant girl lights a lamp and leaves you a plate of sugared almonds and cheese. You nibble absent-mindedly. Outside, the gas lights flicker. You hear the click of carriage wheels over cobblestones. Another client may come. Or perhaps not. Sometimes you're simply on display. A quirky tidbit from the records one famous madam in 1780 reportedly required her girls to learn Italian opera arias, not to sing, but to memorize and recite dramatically during dinner service. Apparently it was quite the novelty among bored nobles. The act of hearing Figaro delivered in deadpan over duck confit was said to drive some men wild. You lie down, careful not to wrinkle your underdress. The mattress is soft, the sheets perfumed. Your eyes drift to the ceiling moldings, roses, cherubs, and vines. Gilded beauty made to impress. You feel very small beneath it. And yet, as you close your eyes, there is a satisfaction. You survived another night, and tomorrow the show begins again. And now the velvet hush of Paris falls away, replaced by something softer, more deliberate. The scent of plum blossoms, faint sandalwood smoke, the rustling of silk slippers on polished wood. You are no longer in Europe. You are in a red lantern parlor in southern Canton, late 18th century under the rule of the Qing Dynasty. The air is thick with humid grace and expectation, and the rules here are older than dynasties carved in both custom and bone. You're seated at a lacquered table set with delicate porcelain cups, thin as eggshells and painted with swirling cranes. Across from you, a man in a robe of brocaded blue speaks softly about poetry, or perhaps tea cultivation. His dialect is refined, your Mandarin just polished enough to follow. But your face is calm, respectful, poised. You are a courtesan in a prestigious flower house, and this is not the kind of establishment that Westerners, or even most locals, would call a brothel. It is technically a music house, but everyone knows what the price of music includes. Unlike your Victorian counterpart, your duties go far beyond the physical. You've memorized the 300 Tang poems. You can play the chin recite witty lines from Dream of the Red Chamber and pour a cup of tea with the kind of precise grace that requires months of training. Your beauty is expected, but it is your intellect that earns loyalty. Your clients do not want haste. They want illusion, the slow burn of attentiveness, the fiction of being understood. Still, for all the refinement, you are not free. Your life is purchased, contracted, ledgered like silkworm threads. Girls are brought in young apprenticed under older courtesans, learning every detail from the proper angle of a bow to how to react when a scholar merchant weeps about his arranged marriage. Everything is performance, even the silence. There's a historical irony here. While women in Qing China were barred from taking the civil service exams or owning land independently, some courtesans, especially Yiji, the elite class, could wield immense social power in their circles. They wrote poetry that circulated in court, advised politicians, and inspired artists. And yet none of them were permitted to marry freely. A common saying warned, "A flower girl may serve tea to a minister, but she must never presume to drink with his wife." You refill the teacup, careful not to splash. The tea is Nanjing green and subtle, its leaves floating like tiny boats in the pale green liquid. The man thanks you not with words, but a gentle nod. Your heart does not flutter. You've seen men fall in love after 3 cups and a melancholy line of verse. You've also seen those same men vanish when debts came due. Outside, rain falls in rhythm with the bamboo chimes strung by the balcony. The street is dark, but alive vendors hawking sesame cakes, a rickshaw, clattering past somewhere a child cries. You imagine fleetingly a life down there, a normal life. Laundry, chores, love with someone who doesn't pay to listen. A popular anecdote. One Yiji named Liu Rushi was so learned and politically engaged that she frequently dressed in men's robes and debated with Confucian scholars. She eventually married a high-ranking official, an extremely rare occurrence, but was never accepted by polite society. Historians still argue whether her intellectual reputation protected or doomed her in the long run. Your own path is not so exceptional. You've had generous clients, yes, even one who offered to buy your freedom. But you know how quickly such promises dissolve, especially when made with wine and flute music in the background. You thanked him with grace, declined softly. Better to rely on the house, the ritual, the routine. At least here the boundaries are known. After the man leaves, the mood shifts. You slip off your formal robe and stretch your arms. Behind a screen, a fellow courtesan softly plucks a melody on the pipa. You recognize the tune. It's an old folk song from Hunan, plaintive and warm. A memory stirs something about your grandmother's garden, and then it fades. Your room is sparse but beautiful bamboo mats. A calligraphy scroll of the moon, a carved sandalwood comb resting beside a bowl of magnolia water. You remove your hairpins one by one, the tension in your scalp melting. The heavy robe slides off your shoulders like rain-down glass. You wash your hands in a basin of chrysanthemum tea, not just for the scent, but the belief that it preserves beauty. A quiet superstition. Another thread in the tapestry of your routine. And when you lie on your mat, one lantern still flickering, you breathe deeply. You survive this day with dignity intact. That matters here. Reputation is a currency no coin can match. You wake again, except this time the air is hot, dry, and tinged with the scent of ash and citrus. There's no perfumed lantern, no parlor hush, no pipa song. Instead, above your head is a faded mural of Venus, lounging in the clouds, her painted limbs slowly flaking with age. The wall sweats in the morning sun, even though it's barely past dawn. You are in Pompei, now 1st century CE, under the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, though of course no one yet knows what's coming. The room is simple, though not miserable. A single wooden couch with a straw mattress. a small lamp on a stone shelf, and a niche in the wall, where a clay phallus hangs a symbol, not just of fertility, but of luck, prosperity, and warding off evil. The Romans were very direct about their symbols. Nothing about this space pretends to be anything other than what it is, a working room, in a Roman lupanar, a brothel. Your feet hit the tiled floor, still cool from the night. Outside, you can already hear sandals slapping on stone as merchants open shops. Street vendors set out olives and anchovies, and the clang of a smith's hammer announces another busy day. You wash with a trickle of cold water from the terracotta jug left by the door and dress in a thin tunica, undyed fraying at the seams. There is no corset, no scented powder, no elaborate tea ritual. Here work is faster, raw or transactional. Your name might be Thais or Daphne, or simply number 4, depending on who's speaking. Some clients don't even bother to ask. You are not expected to flirt or entertain over poetry and figs. You're expected to be available, efficient, clean. This is not high-end society like the heterae of Athens or the geisha of Kyoto. This is the Roman Empire's working-class sex trade, and the evidence of your existence is literally carved into the walls. You glance toward the hallway where graffiti covers the plaster, some of it vulgar, some poetic, some downright absurd. Real inscriptions found in the Pompei lupanar include such lines as, "I made love here with the barmaid Vibius Restitutus, slept here alone and missed his darling Urbana, and simply Lucius was here." There are even price lists. One of the most notorious inscriptions reads, "2 asses for a session," suggesting that the cost of your labor could be equivalent to a loaf of bread and a watered jug of wine. It's startling how much we know about Roman brothels, not through literature or state record, but through the graffiti murals and remains preserved by volcanic ash. Scholars have debated for decades whether the lupanar in Pompei was representative of all Roman brothels, or whether it catered to a particular class. Historians still argue whether some of the rooms were used strictly for sex work or doubled as living quarters, and whether the workers were slaves, freed women, or a mix of both. What is certain is that most women here did not choose this life freely. You were likely born somewhere far away, perhaps from Gaul or North Africa or Thrace, and sold into slavery as a child. You would have been trained in basic Latin, taught how to keep yourself clean with limited water, how to avoid pregnancy with rudimentary methods, and how to handle drunken men who smelled of garum and arrogance. Your name is not your own. Your body is not your own. But your thoughts, that's the private territory you still rule. A sharp knock at the stone doorway breaks your brief reverie. The first client. He steps in casually, barely looking at your face. His tunic is clean, his belt heavy with coin. A soldier, maybe, or a traveling merchant. He nods toward the bed and tosses a bronze sestertius into the bowl near the door. There's no illusion here. It begins and ends with efficiency. Afterwards, he leaves without a word, the coin still warm from his palm. You wash again quickly. No soap, just water and a scrap of cloth. The next man is already waiting. Roman law was complex when it came to sex work. Prostitutes were expected to register with the Edal's officials and wear specific clothing, usually a toga. Ironically, the same garment worn by male citizens. It was a deliberate humiliation. The toga on a woman marked her as a non-wife, a public woman set apart from matrons who wore the stola. You, of course, are not registered. You're too low on the hierarchy. Just another name scratched on a wall, another silhouette in a mural. At midday, you're allowed a break. You step outside into the bright courtyard where heat bounces off the whitewashed walls. A fig tree droops over the cistern, its fruit nearly bursting. You eat one warm, sticky sweet and feel a moment of normalcy. In the shade, another worker, Cassia, rests her head against the wall, eyes closed. You don't speak. Words feel heavy today. A boy passes in the alley selling honey cakes, and you buy one with a copper coin earned this morning. A luxury. For a moment you sit on the edge of the fountain and chew slowly, savoring the crackle of the crust and the faint sweetness inside. a tiny pleasure in a day built of endurance. One curious tidbit about ancient Roman brothels: they often included erotic frescoes above the doors to indicate what sort of services were offered inside. These weren't just decoration, they were functional advertisements. A client who couldn't read could still shop visually. One room might depict a woman astride a man, another a couple entangled in a more acrobatic pose. You sometimes glance up at the image above your own room, painted with fading ochre and black outlines. It shows a woman reclining with a man kneeling between her legs. You've stared at it so often it feels like a caricature of your own life, frozen in eternal theater. The afternoon brings more clients one after the other. A few are kind. Most are not. One tells you his wife never touches him anymore. Another refuses to meet your gaze. A third asks your name and seems surprised when you lie. He leaves a tip anyway. And as the sun begins to lower toward the western hills, you clean the room one last time. You toss the old straw out the back and replace it with fresh, fresher bedding. You rinse the bowl, tidy your tunic, braid your hair. The madam nods at you from her corner stool and makes a note in a wax tablet. She's not cruel, just tired. At twilight, a group of men laugh outside, their voices echoing down the narrow street. They'll come in eventually. Drink first, maybe some dice games, then the usual. But for a moment before they do, you're alone again. You sit at the edge of the bed, breathing in the scent of crushed fig leaves, hearing the creak of cartwheels in the distance. The walls flicker with lamplight. You think about the mountain, the one they call Vesuvius. Sometimes you feel a strange pressure in your ears when the wind shifts. The birds go quiet. No one takes it seriously. The earth has always been like this. You lie down just for a moment. Close your eyes. Let the heat settle over you like a blanket. And many years later, when archaeologists dig through the hardened ash, they will find your room. Your name, if they find it, might be scratched into the plaster next to a heart. Or a rude joke. Your bed will still be there. So will the mural. Your story in fragments will outlast the empire. And now you drift once again out of the ornate parlors, away from the glowing lanterns of Qing China, and into colder winds. There is no velvet curtain or powdered cheek here, no jasmine tea or courtly verse, just ash and earth and stories nearly lost to time. This is the space where history grows thin, and the women who lived and worked along its shadowed edges are remembered only by fragments, charcoal scrolls, worn stone carvings, and the quiet speculation of archaeologists brushing dust from bones. This is the story of the forgotten. You find yourself beside a Viking longhouse, somewhere along the trade routes that once stretched from the icy fjords of Norway to the winding alleys of Constantinople. The year is uncertain. The smell of smoke and sweat is sharp in the air. And inside this crude timber hall, laughter mingles with grog-fueled roars. The warriors are flush with spoils. Silver arm rings bear pelts. Stories of raids and the presence of women who offer companionship for coin trinkets, or simply the safety of firelight and food. She isn't called a courtesan or even a harlot. She has no title at all. She's just a woman who survives, who offers her body to a man who's likely lost more friends than fingers. Her laughter is practiced, her eyes wary. No one writes her name down. But she exists in enough sagas as a comfort taken, or a warmth bought, that we know she was there more than once, and often unremembered. You move again. Time skips like a stone across centuries, and lands you in an Egyptian port city under the rule of the Ptolemies. Here on the edge of the Mediterranean commerce and conquest, have drawn sailors, scribes, and soldiers from all corners of the empire. In Alexandria, the great library gleams with the world's knowledge, papyrus stacked and copied ideas debated and catalogued. But just beyond the scholar's marble colonnade lies another kind of economy. Beneath the rhythm of temple bells and the cry of spice vendors, women wait in narrow houses marked not by signs but by stories. Some specialize in sacred rites, remnants of older fertility cults where sensuality was tied not to shame, but to divine rhythm. Others simply work for copper coins and leftover bread. One may call herself a priestess of Hathor. Another wears only the scarab charm her mother gave her. Their names lost, their legacy a shadow against the splendor of dynasties. And yet their presence is echoed in legal text lines about inheritance, about fines for unpaid debts, about children born without legitimate fathers. There's one dusty scroll, a court record from 140 BCE, where a woman argues for her right to remain in her rented home after her companion vanished to sea. Her claim is dismissed. The record ends with a line: she was removed. That's it. Removed. The human behind that verb, her grief, her labor, her effort is nowhere to be found. You shift again. The desert heat fades, replaced by the chill damp of a medieval outpost near the Baltic Sea. The year might be 1271 or 1283. No one wrote it down for certain. But there's a fortified trading post here, Novgorod perhaps, where furs are sold by the bundle, and language barriers are crossed with silver and skin. A woman stands in the shadow of the town's timber wall, wrapped in a patched cloak. Her hands are cracked from the cold. She doesn't look like anyone's idea of a seductress. She's too tired for that. She offers warmth. Maybe only that, and sometimes not even that is enough. She may have once been a farmer's daughter, displaced by war, famine, or debt. Or she may have followed a soldier here and found herself alone. Historians still argue whether such women were seen as pariahs or accepted as a rough necessity. What's certain is that their names appear occasionally in fine ledgers, only ever as deductions. Lodging, bread, company for guests, always anonymous, always quantified. In some places these women operated near the heart of town, tolerated, taxed, and observed. In others they were driven out beyond the walls, tied to superstition, blamed for disease, and sacrificed during waves of moral reform. One curious tidbit: in Lübeck, Germany, a medieval statute banned sex workers from wearing striped cloth, clanging bells, or red slippers, lest they disturb the peace. Yet such rules also indicate that the women were common enough to require regulation. And now the wind pulls again toward the other side of the world, Mesoamerica, before European conquest. In Aztec, Tenochtitlan society was rigid and ritualized. Warriors, merchants, priests all moved through life with codified roles. And yet hidden within the vast marketplace were women known as ahuyanime, cheerful women. Some were singers and dancers. Others offered more private companionship, though the Catholic conquistadors would later write lurid descriptions of these women as scandalous or demonic. Their own society may have viewed them differently. Some sources suggest that certain classes of these women were attached to temples and held semi-respected roles. Others were mocked in poetry, suggesting familiarity, not reverence. What's clear is that their identity was complex: part entertainer, part social lubricant, part scapegoat. One Nahuatl riddle poem speaks of a woman who sells smiles and sadness in the same breath. Scholars debate its meaning. Was it a metaphor for fate or a literal commentary on a known figure? No one agrees. But the image endures, fluttering like a feathered headdress across the centuries. Closer now, not in space, but in mindset. You stand in a coal-stained alley in 17th century London, before the Victorians, before gaslight, before lace curtains. The bawdy houses of Southwark are overflowing loud with laughter games and disease. Women here take on nicknames: Bouncing Bess, Orange Moll, Black-Eyed Nell. Their work is barely policed unless they cause trouble, and even then the constables mostly take bribes or demand services in lieu of coin. Some brothels are even owned by women widows or sharp-witted madams who know how to play men against each other and keep the rent paid. A surviving pamphlet from 1668 titled The Whore's Petition is addressed mockingly to Lady Castlemaine, one of King Charles II's mistresses. In it, the working women of London sarcastically plead for rights and protections, accusing the court of hypocrisy. It's biting, clever, and oddly empowering. A rare moment when the forgotten dared speak back if only in jest. You step through all these places. You feel the repetition not of sin, not of scandal, but of necessity, of survival, of adaptation. Over and over again, women have found themselves here at the blurred boundary between intimacy and transaction, performance, and presence. Some found agency, some found ruin, most left no trace. And yet the traces exist if you know where to look. In old ledgers, in graffiti scratched on stone walls, in the worn-down steps of entrances used only after dusk. There's a slab of marble from a Greek island bearing the faint outline of a sandal and the word Theodora. No date, no context, just the sense that someone once stood there and wanted to be remembered, or refused to be erased. Even today, archaeologists debate what constitutes evidence of sex work. Is a bronze mirror in a burial suggestive? Is a cluster of pins and perfume jars near a merchant quarterproof? Historians still argue whether the women mentioned in certain tax rolls were independent workers or enslaved, whether they were respected for their skills or reviled for their existence. The records are unclear. The silences speak loudly. You return to the present, the imagined present of your narrative. But now it feels different. You've seen the scaffolding of the past. You've walked in shoes left outside crumbling doorways, heard voices that never made it into textbooks. You carry their names in the folds of your breathless night. And for just a moment, you lie still, not in judgment, not in awe, but in quiet recognition. You are part of a longer story, one written not in ink, but in resilience, and it hums beneath the silence. The door closes behind the last gentleman. His footsteps echo down the hallway before disappearing into the muffled din of the street carriages. Clattering over cobblestones, the distant bark of a dog, a sharp whistle from some midnight constable. The parlor grows quiet again, as it always does, like a stage cleared after the final act, the gaslights humming their soft lullaby as they dim into a golden haze. The room smells faintly of lavender and tobacco, the remnants of too many conversations meant to be forgotten. You walk back through the corridor with a familiar weight in your steps. Not heavy exactly, but not light either. Just the feel of wear settling back into your limbs like dust in an old book. You pass a mirror, narrow-spotted, half-clouded by steam, and glance at the reflection. Not out of vanity, just habit. And what stares back is someone who looks neither young nor old, not joyful nor broken, just someone who has lived another day through. Your gown rustles as you walk blue silk, losing its crisp edge from the morning. It now clings slightly at the waist, wrinkled where you've sat, damp at the hem from the spilled tea you never quite managed to clean up before dinner. In your hair, a borrowed comb tilts slightly off-center, still catching the gaslight like a small, defiant flame. You reach up and pull it out, letting the strands fall naturally over your shoulders. Back in your room, the quiet is immediate, that sort of private hush that feels almost sacred. You close the door gently behind you and lean against it for a moment, not to hold anything back, just to exhale, to be still. The lace curtains stir faintly in the breeze from the cracked window. Outside, a drizzle has begun soft and rhythmic on the glass. You begin the nightly undoing, a ritual like any other. Your boots first scuffed, but neatly laced slip off with a gentle nudge. The corset takes longer, your fingers moving with memory rather than focus, working the stays loose until you can finally breathe in full. That first unbound breath always surprises you. A reminder that your ribs do in fact expand. Your chemise is next, then the skirt, then the shift. Each layer peels away like time itself until you're down to skin and silence. Not naked, just returned. Returned to the version of yourself that only lives in this room, in this hour. On the washstand, a cracked porcelain basin holds the last of the warm water saved from the kitchen stove. You splash your face, wiping away rouge, and the residue of perfume that settled into your pulse points. The water smells faintly of rosewater floral, but not sweet. It doesn't cover everything, but it doesn't need to. This moment is not about masking. It's about shedding. And here you pause. There is a peculiar comfort in the routine. It might seem strange to someone peeking in from the modern world, where hot showers, electric light, and locked doors are taken for granted, where privacy is assumed, not earned. But here in 1858, in a brothel tucked into a narrow London street, privacy is a currency far rarer than coin. And tonight you have it. On the small table by the bed sits a tiny candle flickering in its tin holder. You light it from the stub of another pressing wick, to wick until the flame catches. Its glow softens the room, muting the wallpaper's worn pattern, and the scuff marks on the floorboards. You settle onto the mattress, still lumpy, still uneven, and let yourself sink. And yet sleep doesn't come right away. Your mind begins its quiet revolutions. Not frantic, just steady, like the click of a watch being wound. You think of the man from earlier, Mr. Howell or Harold or something with an H. He was kind in that detached way some clients are. Respectful, didn't rush, didn't ask too many questions. Said he sold linens in Clerkenwell. You wonder idly if that's true. You think of Eliza, who used to sleep in the next room. Vanished a month ago. Said she was going to try for work at the music hall. Left one morning with her red shawl folded neatly and a slice of bread in her hand. Never came back. No one talks about her now, but the empty room hasn't been filled. Mrs. Cartwright says it's being repainted. There's a superstition you once heard from one of the kitchen girls. If a candle flickers 3 times in still air, it means someone's thinking of you. Yours flutters once, then settles. You smile faintly at the silliness of it, but you don't blow it out. Instead, you pull the woolen blanket up around your shoulders. Not quite warm enough, but familiar. You fold it under your chin like a memory. And for just a moment, your eyes drift over the patch of night sky, visible through the window. It's dark, clouded, but steady. No moon, just shadow. A fact you once overheard during this very year, 1858. London was gripped by the Great Stink. The Thames, choked with sewage, reeked so badly that Parliament considered relocating. You imagine the smell drifting in with the summer heat, overwhelming even the perfume of flower girls and the roasted chestnuts sold on street corners. It makes you grateful oddly for the winter damp and the closed shutters. And here's a strange little tidbit. Some brothels in the East End used to advertise their services with discreet chalk symbols near the doorstep. Tiny coded marks only known to those who sought them. Like a secret language etched into brick. You've never seen one yourself, but you like the idea that somewhere someone once tried to make their living visible, if only to the right eyes. Your body begins to settle. The ache in your legs eases. Your shoulders soften. The space behind your eyes dims. You think of your sister maybe if you had one. A girl who took in laundry, married a carpenter, 2 kids. You don't resent her. Not exactly. But sometimes you envy the simplicity of her daily bread and cold mutton suppers. No clients. No powder. Just weariness earned by honest hours. But then again, you're not unhappy. Not entirely. There's something to be said for surviving with grace. For knowing your lines and playing your part, and keeping your dignity intact when the world insists it doesn't belong to you. The wind rattles the window latch. The candle shrinks into itself, the flame folding low. In the hallway you hear a floorboard creak just once, then silence. And then it's just your breathing. Deep, even, measured, not asleep, not yet, but ready. You wouldn't know it from the serene koi pond outside, or the embroidered silk slippers gliding soundlessly across polished wood floors. But behind the carved rosewood screens of the Lotus Pavilion, survival depends on much more than beauty and grace. The year is 1586 deep in the Ming Dynasty, And though the empire boasts porcelain palaces and mandarins in feathered hats, you, an elegant flower lady in one of Nanjing's licensed pleasure houses, know that life beneath the surface flows with a different current entirely. You rise before dawn not from the crow of a rooster, but the gentle rustle of silk bedding and the muted steps of Madame Lin, who sweeps through the girls' quarters with the quiet authority of a seasoned chess master. No scolding, no raised voice. Just the tap of her ivory hairpin against the lacquered doorframe is enough to wake everyone. The air is cool and perfumed with a hint of sandalwood filtered through paper screens. You slip from your bed, careful not to ruffle the brocade too harshly. Image, after all, is half your currency here. You're not a street courtesan, no, the Lotus Pavilion sits within the regulated entertainment district, patronized by scholars, merchants, and the occasional noble son, nursing a bruised ego from the imperial examination failures. You're educated, or at least taught to seem so. You recite poetry, play the chin, and pour tea with a grace that makes even the most seasoned scholar pause mid-thought. The makeup you apply isn't garish, but studied rice powder to smooth the skin, a petal of red on the lips, and 2 faint spots of rouge high on your cheeks. Positioned not by vanity, but by memorized protocol, passed from girl to girl like a secret spell. This morning your first task is not to entertain, but to prepare. The pavilion functions like a finely tuned mechanism. Someone tends the koi. Someone oils the folding screens. You are assigned to the incense inventory, ensuring the prized strands of Vietnamese agarwood and cheapest sticks from Fujian are separated, labeled, and kept dry. A misplaced scent could sour a client's mood, or worse signal that you've forgotten the delicate hierarchy of indulgence that rules this place. Still, there's a quiet dignity in these rituals. You light a stick to test the scent. It burns slowly, its smoke curling in the still air like calligraphy. A part of you drifts back to childhood, to the garden where your grandmother used to grow chrysanthemums for temple offerings. But there is no garden here, no temple. Only the occasional painted screen that pretends to be a window. You rehearse verses from Li Qingzhao's poems, as you polish a tea set, just in case one of tonight's guests is a man of letters. The trick is to sound sincere, not rehearsed. To pause at the right syllables. To tilt your head at the moment that best displays your hair ornament. The goal isn't just to flatter. It's to suggest a refined soul behind the painted face, something just elusive enough to spark obsession. Mid-morning, a musical instructor arrives, a stooped man with long yellowing fingernails and a beard like a willowy ink brush. He does not speak. He only raises his eyebrows and waits for you to kneel beside the zither. Your fingers hover, then descend, coaxing sound from string. You play not just to impress, but to remind yourself that you still can. The pavilion doesn't care if you lose your edge, it simply replaces you. There's a saying in Nanjing. A courtesan is like plum blossom in winter, beautiful, admired, and soon forgotten. Madame Lin reminds you of this often, usually in the form of a compliment. Your voice has the clarity of melting ice, she told you last week. Then added without a trace of irony, don't let it crack. You are allowed a light meal at noon congee with pickled vegetables and 1 preserved duck egg, the luxury item doled out sparingly. A girl from another house once choked on hers and had to be carried out. She never returned. Some say she died. Others say she married a silk merchant and moved to Suzhou. Most girls here prefer the death version. It seems more plausible. The pavilion opens in the late afternoon. Lanterns are lit. Scrolls unrolled, flower arrangements refreshed. You help place fresh magnolia in the stone vase near the entry, its perfume subtle but lingering. As the sun lowers, you sense the shift in air, the slow tightening of the invisible corset that governs this world. Your performance begins again. A guest arrives shortly after dusk. Not one of the scholars you prefer, he is rotund face, shiny with wine, even before dinner is served. His voice fills the room like a gong drum, laughing before his jokes land. He calls you little sister. and insists you pour baijiu without spilling a drop, testing your nerves more than your skill. Still you smile, tilt your head, and float through the motions. You offer him a riddle that once amused a prince. What has a mouth but cannot speak, a bed but does not sleep? He guesses incorrectly 3 times before slamming his hand on the table in mock frustration. The answer, of course, is a river. He laughs anyway. The wine flows freely. So do the compliments, the touching. It's not violent, not cruel, but it chips at something you can no longer name. Later, when he stumbles away with help from an attendant, you retreat to the rear garden, your feet silent on stone. You sit beneath a ginkgo tree, hidden from the guests, and press your palms together without speaking. It is not prayer, just breath. A way to return to yourself. There's a wall at the edge of the pavilion, old and mossy. Beyond it, ordinary women wash clothes and raise children, and worry about rice prices. Sometimes you dream of crossing it, though you don't know what you'd do on the other side. You've heard of a woman who fled to become a nun in Hangzhou, but she had wealthy patrons to pay off her debt. You do not. Still, stories circulate, shared in whispers, during evening hair-brushing sessions. One girl insists she served wine to a eunuch, who once served the Empress Dowager. Another claims her father was a failed magistrate, who sold her for failing to produce a male heir. Everyone here has a story. Some even have a sliver of truth. Historically, Ming Dynasty brothels like the Lotus Pavilion were both entertainment venues and unofficial salons of cultural exchange. High-ranking courtesans could influence poetry trends, or even public opinion, though always indirectly and always at risk. The most famous Ming courtesan Liu Rushi was known not just for her beauty, but for her poetry and political commentary. She even dressed as a man to attend scholarly gatherings. You are no Liu Rushi, but you recite her verses before sleep, just in case words can work small magic. There's also the quirky matter of hairpins. In the Ming era, courtesans weren't allowed to wear gold, unless granted by a patron of high status. As a result, hairpins became secret symbols. A silver phoenix could signal availability. A coral branch might mean taken. You wear a mother-of-pearl plum blossom today. It means nothing, but it sparkles just right under the lanterns. By midnight, your feet ache. Your smile stiffens and your voice thickens from overuse. The pavilion hums with candlelight, and recited poems, some real, some invented. You excuse yourself with practiced grace and slip into the quiet corridor that leads to the girls' wing. You pass a mirror. The woman who looks back at you is perfect skin like porcelain lips, still stained hair intact. But her eyes, they flicker, not with fear or fatigue, but with something older, something tired of watching itself perform. Your sleeping mat feels harder tonight, or perhaps you're simply more awake. You breathe deeply slow and even like the madam taught you. The faint scent of magnolia still clings to your sleeves. You don't think about tomorrow. You don't let yourself. Outside, the koi swim in lazy circles, unaware of anything but water and shadow. Inside, another day ends without fanfare. Just the silent settling of bodies, the gentle creak of wood, the rustle of silk. Just 24 hours. And somehow it was both too much and not quite enough. The air in the parlor has turned thicker, warmer, dimmer. Gaslight flickers gently across the polished wood of the mantel, casting soft shadows that sway like ghosts across the wallpaper. The conversation among the girls has quieted to murmurs, interspersed with the occasional clink of teacups, or the faint scrape of a chair being nudged into place. You sit with your back to the velvet cushioned spine, finally allowed to relax after hours of controlled posture. Your corset is loosened now, not undone, but slackened enough to let you breathe without effort. It is one of the many small mercies that mark the end of a long night. Outside, the rain taps steadily on the windows, a slow and rhythmic lull that seems to echo the weariness in your bones. You glance toward the dark glass where your reflection barely meets your gaze, a pale oval in the soft glow framed by hair that has begun to slip from its pins. You can feel the faint stickiness of rice powder clinging to your cheeks, the ghost of perfume that has long since faded into something more human. The night has not been the worst. No raised voices, no bruised pride. No one lingered too long. And that in this life is what passes for fortunate. Mrs. Cartwright has already retired. Her door closed without ceremony, footsteps quiet across the upstairs landing. The girls finish their tea slowly, as though savoring not the flavor, but the moment of stillness itself. You remain seated not because you are needed, but because to move too quickly now would feel like breaking something delicate. The room holds a hush, and in it the residue of 1,000 evenings just like this one. You remember without trying to your first evening here. The unfamiliar softness of the carpet, the overwhelming scent of lavender, and warm bodies the precise way Mrs. Cartwright had explained the rules. No red lips before dark, no lingering attachments. No one outside these walls must suspect what happens within. There had been a comfort in the clarity even then, a logic to the routine, like a play that repeats endlessly with slight variations. Somewhere deep within the house, a clock chimes once. You count the echo in your head. The hour is late or early depending on your perspective. Sleep does not come easily after nights like this, when you have had to be so many versions of yourself that you are not quite sure which one to take into bed. You rub your eyes and rise slowly the long skirts of your blue silk dress, whispering against each other as you pass through the doorway. The hallway smells faintly of coal smoke and rosewater. You tread lightly, listening to the muffled noises of the house settling, the thud of wood contracting, the wind brushing against the glass. As you climb the stairs, the ache in your feet pulses in rhythm with each step. The banister under your hand is smooth from years of use, the brass finial at the top, polished by countless fingers like yours. In your room, the fire has burned low. A red-orange glow casts shifting shadows across the ceiling, cracked but familiar. You begin to unpin your hair, feeling the slow release of weight as each strand falls free. The brush sits on your dresser, and you pick it up out of habit, running it slowly through your hair stroke after stroke. The repetitive motion is grounding, comforting, a quiet ritual. You think of the others, of Lily, who dreams of saving enough to leave and open a boarding house in Margate, of Ruth, who still keeps her mother's Bible under her pillow, of Madeline, whose accent betrays a childhood in Marseille, though she never speaks of it. Each of you arrived here by different roads, but now those roads converge each night in this house, under this roof, behind these curtains. History rarely writes about women like you, and when it does, it tends to flatten, to simplify. You become metaphors or statistics or cautionary tales. Yet in these long hours in the quiet rituals of tea and hairbrushes of corsets and candlelight, your life is not a headline, but a series of sensations. Warm-bred, aching feet, the cool relief of water splashed on a flushed face. During the 1850s, London was estimated to have over 8,000 brothels, many disguised behind respectable facades. Few admitted their existence aloud. The Contagious Diseases Acts, debated fiercely in Parliament, just a few years after your imagined evening, would begin to regulate women's bodies in ways men would never be subject to. And still, even now, few historians linger long in these drawing rooms. You sit on the edge of the bed. The sheets are rough, not unpleasantly so, but textured in a way that keeps you tethered to the moment. You draw your knees up slowly, letting the day slide from your shoulders like a shawl. The single candle by the bedside gutted, and low dances shadows up across the walls. You lie down without ceremony. There is no need. Behind closed eyelids, your mind begins to fold inward, cataloguing details in its own quiet language. The rustle of skirts, the bite of tea too hot to sip the soft chime of a coin, dropped in your hand. There is no moral to draw tonight, no conclusion to be made, The day happened. You lived it. And now, with the clock still ticking softly in the hall, you will sleep. The door clicks softly shut behind you. You're alone again, just you and the lingering hush of the room. The night's final customer has left, and with him goes the last thread of tension you've been holding in your shoulders. You let it drop all at once, the silence embracing you like an old friend. You kick off your shoes, though kick might be too enthusiastic a word. It's more of a tired toe nudge, the sort of weary ritual performed so many times it feels older than memory. One shoe lands near the bed, the other by the hearth, like mismatched punctuation at the end of a long, unspoken sentence. You walk toward the mirror, not out of vanity but routine. The same face greets you, slightly flushed from gaslight, an effort of faint sheen of powder lips touched with rouge long since faded. You reach up, slowly removing the pins from your hair. Each one lets loose a strand that curls with relief. The weight of the day of performance, of posture, of polite laughter, slips off with every piece of your disguise. You brush out the tangles, each stroke of the bristle, a small return to yourself. It's one of the few moments that feels fully yours. In the mirror, a woman who's worked all night. Not glamorous, not tragic, just real, and very, very tired. The candle on the table burns low. You dip the snuffer and extinguish it with a gentle puff of smoke, leaving only the glow from the hearth. The silence changes texture, thicker, more peaceful now. You stretch your arms overhead, the corset long since removed, and the freedom in your breath feels luxurious. You change into your nightdress, the cotton soft and worn at the seams, and you sit on the edge of your bed, feet bare on the wooden floorboards that creak familiarly beneath you. There's no clock in your room, but you feel its presence. The quiet ticking from the parlor travels through the walls like the heartbeat of the house. Mrs. Cartwright has likely retired to her ledger by now, tallying up the night's earnings in neat, tight handwriting. Downstairs, the last embers in the fireplace settle with a soft crackle. A carriage clatters faintly in the distance wheels on cobblestone, echoing like a memory you're not sure is yours. You lie back against the mattress. It's not a luxurious bed, but tonight, it welcomes you like something kinder. The horsehair lumps and creaking frame seem to soften. Your arms fold over your stomach, not in tension, but simply to rest there like a gesture of quiet protection. Through the thin walls, you can just make out Lily's voice, soft and muffled, maybe telling a story, maybe laughing. The words blur into sound. You're drifting. Sometimes you wonder how much of you is left at the end of the day. Not in the sad way, not tonight. Just a passing thought. There's a quiet kind of satisfaction in having endured another round like a performer stepping off stage after the curtain falls. The applause might be silent, but the effort was real. You were seen. Even if they don't remember your name tomorrow, you were seen tonight. The fire dies slowly. Its light flickers across the ceiling, casting shadows that dance and stretch like lazy ghosts. You follow them with your eyes until the shapes dissolve into nothing. Your breathing slows. It's a rhythm your body knows well, a lullaby composed of exhaustion and survival. Outside, the rain begins. Just a few tentative drops at first, then a soft curtain tapping gently at the window panes. It's the perfect sound. Not too loud, not too fast. Like nature itself is urging you to let go. You shift beneath the blanket, curling slightly, and let the warmth pool around your knees. One more sigh, one more flutter of your lashes. The fire is out now. The hearth is dark. But the house isn't empty. The walls remember. The beds remember. The quiet, shared strength of every woman here echoes even when no one speaks it aloud. It's in the way Lily double knots her ribbons, in the way Sarah hides a dried flower in her drawer, in the way you sleep deep and without apology. Historians still debate whether women in brothels had more agency than those in respectable households. Some argue the wages were higher, the freedoms greater. Others say that choice without options isn't real choice at all. But here in this moment, you're not a debate. You're just a person breathing in and out beneath a wool blanket in a house full of breathing people. And for now, that is enough. There will be morning again. There will be more customers, more corsets, more tea gone cold. But not now. Now there is only the clock, only the soft hush of rain, only the steady sacred quiet that wraps around you like the arms of something older than comfort. Maybe not peace, but close enough. And now, dear listener, it's time to let your thoughts dissolve. You've walked through narrow streets, climbed creaking stairs, worn heavy dresses, and met strange, forgettable men under flickering gaslight. You've stood under silent judgment, smiled through weariness, and made it somehow through 24 full hours of a life few would envy, but many have lived. You don't need to think about corset strings or the chill of basin water. Not anymore. You're done for the day. You've returned to a room that may be small but is finally still. Every sound has faded. Every whisper, every footstep, every flick of the parlor curtain. All of it belongs to yesterday now. Your breathing has softened without you noticing. Your body feels heavier not from burden, but from release. Like everything you've carried can be set down for just a little while. Like you've earned the right to forget. Outside, the rain continues. Its rhythm is perfect, a gentle percussion against the window that blurs all sharp thoughts. Let it carry you. Let it hush the world. You are safe. You are warm. You are here. There's nothing left to be done tonight. No roles to play. No tasks waiting. No one watching. Just you and sleep and the endless velvet of the quiet. So close your eyes. Let go of the room, the night, the noise, and drift. We'll be here again next time. Until then, sleep well.